Are you curious about the 5 ways to find clients and for your real estate practice in a down market? Then you're in the right place. That's what we're going to talk about as we start out this call today. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Mastermind Agent, and this is the Referral Mastermind Call. We have 3 sessions that we talk about, 3 phases of this call. The first, we talk about something new. We're going to jump into that in just a second. I think you're going to like that. Next, we talk about any way that you want to expand your repeat and referral practice. That's coming up in the second phase. So get your questions ready for that. And then number 3, we're going to talk about any way that you think that you would like to talk about expanding any part of your real estate practice. All right. So those are the 3 areas we're going to talk about today. Let's go ahead and jump into the first one, which I think is a pretty cool topic. We're going to talk about the 5 ways that you can find real estate clients in a down market. Okay, so 5 ways that you can find buyers and sellers of real estate in a down market. That's the goal of this first part here. So let's go through it. Number 1, I think the most important area that you should be spending your time on. See, in a down market, you're going to have more time than money, right? That's kind of the issue. And what you want to do in that situation is you want to focus on things that are going to work. Okay, things that have worked for you in the past, things that will continue to work. I'm going to go through my list of the 5 in just a second, but I want to kind of lay the foundation here. The first thing you should do is look at you personally and your individual practice. How did you generate business over the last 12 months? Maybe even the last 24 months or 36 months. Start looking at that. How have you actually been bringing business in? Do you believe that that will continue to work in the future? If so, that's what you should be doing because it's already proven itself for you and how you run your practice. So we should start there. For most people, the number 1 source of business in their practice is repeat and referral. So we're going to now start going through our list, and that'll make a lot of sense because, surprise, surprise, the number 1 way to get repeat and referrals in this market, the number 1 way to find buyers and sellers for your real estate practice in this market is repeat and referral. Okay, so what I recommend that you do is you get involved in your repeat and referral business by delving in there and looking for the motivated buyers and sellers. Look for your motivated buyers and sellers in this market, and the key is this: stay in touch with your past clients and sphere of influence. You know, when things start to slow down, we get constrictive on our budgeting, and that's fine. Do not, though, constrict on your past clients and sphere of influence. It's the lowest cost marketing that you do. I can almost guarantee it. It's the lowest cost thing that you do, and it produces the best, the highest level of success, the best fruit. Now, one thing I do want to point out as we're going through this list of the 5 ways to find clients in a down market is I want to talk about this idea of only working with qualified and motivated people. Only work with qualified and motivated people. So as you're going down, you've got to start screening people out that are not motivated and they're not qualified, right? They're just testing the market for some reason. That's not going to work in this kind of environment. Or they're not qualified. You're really, in the upward moving market, pretty much everybody is qualified, say on the selling side, because the equity in their property is growing. In a downward moving market on the selling side, equities are shrinking. And so if people have over leveraged their homes by either having a huge first, have a huge first combined with a declining price. The other, I'm sorry, I'm trying to help some people get in. The idea of a high price and a high mortgage with a declining price, that's going to squeeze out their equity. The other thing is some people have taken out HELOCs on their property and they've reduced their equity that way. If they're doing any of those kind of things, they're not going to work in this market. So you've got to look for motivated people and qualified people in this market. That's got to become critical for you to start screening through. So the PCSOI, those repeat referrals that are coming in, that's going to be your lowest cost and highest quality lead in general, but you still need to screen them for quality as far as are they qualified? That's the key. And then motivation, do they really want to move? Those are the things you're going to need to be looking at. All right, let's go into um, area number two. So this is kind of how you're going to get new business. I think that an area that's really going to develop over the next 12 months is first-time home buyers. Historically, first-time home buyers are about 40% of the market, but over the last couple of years, that's been squeezed down to just under 25%. And I think what's going to happen is that's going to grow back out to 40%. And if you think about it, in a downward moving market, where all the dynamics that we have, these sellers, these homeowners that have these really low interest rate notes, they don't tend to want to move. And so I think what's going to happen is that you're going to have to, the first time home buyer market is going to grow. I recommend that you start looking into that seriously. And in particular, start looking at the first time home buyer programs where they can get a down payment assistance through one of your government programs, your local government programs, usually at the state level. You could also have it at the county or the city level. So be sure to look into that. And then once you learn what those programs are, you can reach out to your PCSOI and let them know that these programs are available and ask them, do you know of anybody who's thinking of, do you know of anybody who could use this program, right? Kind of define what it is, first time home buyers, get into a home with, for instance, in my area, someone can get into a home with $1,000 down. That's pretty attractive because that's usually the biggest barrier for a renter is accumulating the down payment. So if you've got to look in your market, find out what programs are available, and then you're going to promote that program to your PCSOI. And you're saying, well, Mike, most of these people already own a home, or if you're more established, they do. No problem. Talk to them about to their kids, to the friends of their kids, to their nephews and nieces. Maybe they need this program. Okay. If you're a newer agent or a younger agent, your sphere might need this program. All right, so that's somewhere you want to reach out to. That's why I'm saying PCSOI is very strong and valuable for you and something you should look at. So that's area number two that I think that you should develop and see what is available there. The next one is number three, and that is a move-up buyer. A move-up buyer. And the move-up buyer, I'm going to take a quick note here. Just give me a second to catch my breath. The move-up buyers have been kind of frozen in this market because they don't see a way to sell their home and lose their low interest rate loan and then get the other home that they're looking at, right? And the payment on the new home may be a problem. So assuming you can get around the second issue, and that may work with buy downs and other things, and maybe with prices starting to slide, that may become more attractive. They may still want to hold on to their old home because of that low interest rate. So something you should start talking to them about is why not keep the old home and keep it as an investment property, rent it out with that super low interest rate and low payment, and start to make a little cash flow over there. And then they can use that to swing over and buy their next house, right? Because they'll have some income coming out of there. That's just a scenario you should be chatting with them about. Otherwise, I think the move up home buyers market's going to get a little tight. It's going to get a little tight. But that is a possibility. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because that's probably part of your PCSOI again, part of your PCSOI. So you can reach out to people with that idea. And what you do is you promote that idea and just say, hey, if you're interested in this, let's chat. Reach back out to me and you give them a way to do that, a call to action of how they can get back in touch with you. All right, let's go into the number four. The number four area I think is going to have a lot of interest in the upcoming 12 months, a lot of viability. And that's expired listings. There have not been a lot of expired listings in the last couple of years because the market's been so hot. And in fact, if you look back even over the last 5 years, there really hasn't been a lot of expireds. They've been there, but there's not a lot. I think that's about to change. As the market slows down, help somebody out there, as the market slows down, I think you're going to see a lot more opportunity with these expired listings. And you should be positioning yourself to pick up on those expired listings by educating yourself on how you would reach out to them and talk to them. Remember, the biggest frustration for the expired listing is that their home didn't sell when they thought it should. And they're going to be in the blame game for why that didn't happen. There wasn't enough marketing. There wasn't enough exposure. Number one, they're going to say the agent didn't do their job. And whether that's true or not is irrelevant. That's what they believe. Here's the deal. What's the reason that expired listings happen? This is important for you to realize if you go into this area. The number one reason that listings expire is price. Okay, they were priced wrong, either because they were too aggressive because they thought the market was shooting up and they missed the mark, or they're just not willing to adjust down. So that's going to be the thing you're going to have to work with them on if you do end up relisting them. Otherwise, they're going to become your expired listing if you just price them at the same price again. The next thing are other things like condition, location, and so forth, but those can all be adjusted through with price. Everything can sell at the right price. So keep that in mind as we start to move into this different phase of the market. Again, I just believe that we're starting to move into a downward moving market. And so you have to adjust mentally and prepare yourself, and then you can prepare your clients. But I think expireds are the fourth opportunity that you've got to reach out for new clients. I think it's going to really grow over the next 12 months. I looked in my local market and I was really surprised that in my city we had 8 expired listings in the last week. That kind of surprised me because there's been so few. Now that's not the huge flood that we used to have in the old days, but it's a huge uptick from where it was. And I think that that's going to continue, and you should be monitoring that, preparing yourself and educating yourself on how to deal with expired listings. By the way, they're a fantastic source of listings because you know they want to sell, and you know they're willing to pay an agent. Okay, so they're willing to hire and pay an agent. That's pretty awesome. That brings us to our fifth group of places where I think you can get new business in this slowing down, declining market. And again, that's my estimation of what's going to happen over the next 12 months. I think it's for sell by owners. For sell by owners are getting lonely. Okay. They probably had this great idea. They heard all their neighbors were selling so fast. Everything was exciting. Such a fast paced market. It's a great opportunity to sell. And who needs an agent when everything's flying so fast? Well, that's all changed now. Things are slowing down in most markets, especially in the West. And it's starting to now occur in the South and in the East. And a little bit in the Midwest. The Midwest is holding up pretty good, but I believe that's all going to change. Anyway, FSBOs are getting very lonely. They don't have anyone to talk to, and people aren't coming by their open houses. They're wondering why things aren't happening. They need help. They need advice. They need positioning in the market. They need marketing and exposure. They know it in their gut because they can feel things aren't working out right. I think that is going to be a huge opportunity right now and moving forward over the next 6 to 12 months. So if you have experience with working with FSBOs, that's awesome. Get into that and just kind of brush up on your skills. If not, start learning more. I think that's going to be a huge market that's coming in, and they're going to need our help, and they're going to be a great source of listing. Again, they want to sell. They got the motivation part. What they don't have is they don't want to hire a real estate agent yet. Okay. Most of them are willing to pay a co-op if you ask them. And so that means they are willing to pay a commission. And so it's just a matter of starting to talk to them and showing your value and why it's going to work out. So, and there's two different approaches there. Let me just kind of hit that real quick. With expired listings, you need to move quickly. 40% of them are going to relist with a new agent within 30 days of the expiration. So you want to be right there with them really fast. That's a quick mover. FSBOs, they're going to take a little more time. They usually want to try it out for a month or two on their own, depending on their situation. And so you've got to kind of build a little bit of a relationship with them. But just remember as you're doing that whatever they say, oh, I don't want you, I don't need you, I've got another alternative, blah, blah, they're going to eventually need somebody. You watch, 9 out of 10 are going to hire an agent. It's just a matter of who's going to hang in there long enough and show enough value to them. So I think that's a huge opportunity for people coming up. We haven't had a lot of those opportunities. We've had some FSBOs hanging out there, but they've been successful in this fast market. But the FSBOs are now slowing down. They need our help, and the expireds you're going to start to see proliferate. So again, that's a super hot source for number 4 and 5. So I promised you I'd share the top 5, or not necessarily the top 5, but my 5 picks for ways that you could get business in this down market. I'm actually going to give you a couple bonuses just for hanging in there with us today. Let me give you a couple other ideas I have. that I think you should be looking at over again the next 6 to 12 months, things that aren't here yet, but they're coming, and you should position yourself before your competitors, okay, and get a leg up. So number 6 is REO, real estate owned, foreclosures. These are bank-owned properties, and we call that REO, real estate owned, or that's the term the banks have historically used. And you become an REO agent where you go out and list properties for the bank that they need to sell. Now, that's what it traditionally has been. And of course, the market fluctuates, and now asset managers and a lot of different terms for who the bank is because of the way that mortgages get financed. But you're going to learn that if you get into the REO space, you will learn who they are and how they reach out and touch base with them. A lot of good resources out there. We'll share some of the upcoming summit, and there was some shared in the last summit, by the way, if you were there. The REO is going to be big because banks, there's a huge uptick right now in default rates. I think I just saw that the number of people who are 30 days or more past late on their mortgage has now doubled. Auto loans is doing pretty much the same thing. This is showing, again, that's why I'm saying I believe there's a slowdown in the market. You already feel it, but I think it's going to continue. I don't think we're going to have a soft landing or a quick bounce back or any of that stuff for a lot of dynamics. And one of them is this default rate is another indicator. That's going to continue. Now, remember that there haven't been a lot of foreclosures, luckily, but that, again, I believe that's going to change. It takes a little while to work that out, right? People go behind in their payment, they become delinquent 30, 60, 90 days. And at that point, that's when banks start to move forward on a foreclosure process or try to work something out with the borrower. That could take a little while for them to try to work out some kind of deal. And then, but eventually, say 6 months or so down the line, by then, for sure, they're talking foreclosure if they haven't gone into it already. Depends on your state, what your state rules are as far as the timing and what the bank's policies are. But as the economy slows down, all these things are going to happen. Banks are already tightening up their lending standards. Just saw delinquencies on auto loans in subprime auto loans. Believe it or not, they still have those. And that's up to over almost 10%, just under 10. So the banks are feeling it. They're going to start constricting. They're going to start doing what they have to do to recover as much cash as they can. And so I believe foreclosures are going to be happening again, unfortunately. Initially, we all thought maybe we could avoid that, but I don't think that's going to happen. It is going to take a while, though. I don't expect to see a lot of foreclosures hitting the market again for probably 6, 12 months, maybe even a little bit longer. But REO agents did extremely well in the last downturn, the last big downturn, the Great Recession. Should do extremely well again, assuming the banks don't change the rules. They will change the rules. You're going to have to be flexible. But it's something that you should be looking at now to build the relationships with the banks and the providers, the asset managers, et cetera. Start to learn how to do the BPOs. That's a broker price opinion, kind of like a little mini CMA. That's how you kind of get your foot in the door. So you kind of learn how to do that. That's something I recommend you look at right now. Learn those skills. If you have any interest in going in REO, the beauty of REO is the banks send you an email and they say, hey, we got a new listing for you today. You know, that's pretty cool, right? Because if you have a relationship with a bank, that's what's going to happen. Now you end up having to do all kinds of work, and it's not easy in the sense that you don't do anything. You do a lot of work, but you do get paid well, and you get volume, and then you get your sign out there, and you get a lot of sign calls and buyer calls. You can get a lot of ancillary business as well, because in a down market, everybody wants to buy an REO. They want to buy a foreclosure property. So that's why REO agents have a massive advantage when the economy turns. So if you have any interest in that, start positioning yourself now. Or if you've done it before, start positioning yourself. Again, I've talked to a few agents in that position. All right, that's my next bonus. That's bonus number 1. Bonus number 2 is in the same vein. If you don't want to work with the banks, but you want to take advantage of these foreclosure opportunities, start looking at short sales, right? If you've been around long enough, you did them. If not, start to learn it. That's where you work with the seller, not the bank. You work with the seller who's having problems. They're behind in their payments, and they're trying to figure out a solution so it doesn't go into foreclosure. One of the solutions is called a short sale, and that's where a homeowner sells their property in the open market to a buyer, but the price is not enough to cover the mortgage payment. And there's a deficiency or a difference that has to be made up. And what happens is you ask the bank to make it up in what they call a short seller, short payoff, and the bank takes less. I think that's going to be another area that's going to pop up probably again about 12 months down the line. Why that one's important is that's going to come out of your sphere. Your PCSOI, your past clients of sphere of influence, are going to call you up and say, I need to sell, I got this problem, but I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And you're going to find out that they owe more on their property than their house is worth. And that's where you got to think short sale. So you might want to start figuring out how to make those things work now and start brushing up on those skills. All right, the last area, actually I got two more. So we got bonus number 3 is assumptions. Now we haven't had assumptions in mass since the 70s and 80s, but that's how they solved this problem before of high interest rates. And I've been looking a little bit into that area, and there are still assumptions out there. And these assumptions can be done on FHA, VA, and USDA loans. They're basically government-backed loans. If you have a government-backed loan, you can still do an assumption on it. These are a fixed-rate loan, so you got these sellers, these homeowners that will have these loans that 30-year fixed at 2.5% or 3%. They got the super low payment. A buyer can come in and take over that seller's old loan and walk into the future with that, make payments on it instead of going to get a new mortgage. Now, there's all kinds of issues you got to work through and challenges, and you got to make all the numbers work. You have to, number one, the difference from today from back in the 70s and 80s is the lender has to approve the assumption. If the lender approves the assumption, you can do that. If not, you can't. Basically, what it comes down to is the buyer has to qualify for the loan just like they would if they were to go get a new loan. So you have to have a qualified buyer. This is not an investor deal like it was in the 80s. That's all gone. But if you've got a true buyer who's going to be an owner occupant and they can truly qualify, they're going to be able to get the assumption as well. So instead of getting a 6, 7, 8% mortgage out in the open market, they can just take over some of these old 3% loan. It's called an assumption or an assumption of a loan. Loan assumption, mortgage assumption. These are terms you would look up to learn about it. But basically what it comes down is the seller reaches out to their existing mortgage company and asks for an assumption package. And the assumption package walks you through all the things that need to happen. Now, the reason this is cool is if you're working with a seller who has one of these loans, you're able to become extremely attractive to the open market. You'll be able to sell the property for more than the market value because you've got special financing. Just think of an auto loan, the sale of a car. They've been doing this in the auto industry forever, right? If you've got a, whatever the price, $30,000 car to sell, if they buy it with cash, they're going to buy it for 28, although the market's been really hot, but that's conceptual. If you've got financing, you might be able to sell that same car for 35,000 because the monthly payment, if you can get the interest rate low enough and the monthly payment in line, the buyer doesn't care about the price, they care about the payment. Well, same idea with the house. So we were just talking about short sales. You may have a solution for your short sale people. They have to bring the loan current, but maybe the loan could be assumed rather than going through that foreclosure process, saves their credit, all kinds of really cool things. By the way, if you do assumptions, you need to have the seller, just remember this, the seller needs to get a release of liability, take the seller off the loan. That's where people usually make the biggest error. As real estate agents, we forget to tell them that if you make sure you put that in writing, that you're recommending they do that in case they don't, because if not, then they may come after you for part of the deficiency because you didn't warn them if there ever is a deficiency later on. So that's just a quick key. I've been doing some research, and it turns out about 60% of the loans here in the U.S., houses in the U.S. have a mortgage on them. And in that mortgage group, it's about 20% have FHA loans, as an example. I think it was 18%. And then you got the VA and the USDA, which adds a little bit more. Basically, what it comes down to is the overall market is about 10% of these assumable notes that could be taken over by a seller. It doesn't sound like it's huge, but that's a lot of people, right? That's like 10 million homes here in the US. So when you bump into these, you should look at those assumption deals, because I think that's going to become a very valuable part of your business. In fact, I think it's kind of a cool niche that somebody might want to delve into and could really clean up. Let me give you the last bonus area. That's number 4 on how to get new clients. And the last bonus area I have is this, and that is something people have not thought about since, again, the 70s or 80s, and that is free and clear properties. Free and clear properties. So, and I was kind of surprised in our research, but it turns out that 40% of the houses in America, in the US, have no mortgage on them. 40%, 4 out of 10, no mortgage at all. That means these people are a perfect candidate to be a listing, right? Because they've got options. They can price their home at any price they want because they don't have to worry about paying off a mortgage. So they can be very strategic if they have to sell. Number 2, they can use creative financing. So this is a unique area, and you got to become an expert at it, and you might even need an attorney involved in this if you go into it. But the thing about creative financing is the seller can become the bank. The seller can create a note for the buyer, and then the buyer will pay the seller over time with payments that are agreed to, whatever the terms are. It could be a 30-year amortized loan. It could be a 30-year amortized loan with a payoff in 5, 7, or 10 years. So what they call balloon payment. There's all kinds of structures that can happen here where the seller can be very flexible. The seller, by the way, could even have some other loan come in at the first, and then the seller does some seller carryback. That's the seller becoming the bank on a second, and then the buyer just brings in some cash. So the seller gets kind of half cashed out, plus they get payments over time, et cetera. Why would a seller want to do this? Well, a seller can now take the seller was going to take the money and put it in the bank at interest rates are going up at 3, 4, 5%. Maybe they would leave it in there and instead get 5, 6, 7% or 8% even on a mortgage, right? And get that payment on a secured item. And if anything ever goes wrong, they can foreclose and take the property back over. You got to talk to them about the pitfalls. But this is an opportunity as the markets start to shrink and become harder and harder to sell. If you haven't been through one of these markets, I mean, I was in markets where it took 12 months to find a buyer. I mean, you got to start realizing that if we're going into this downward moving market, which I think we are, you've got to start opening up your mind if you want to be one of the agents that not only survives but thrives. These are some of the areas that you need to look at. So free and clear properties, and then what you can do with that with the creative financing, that's an area I would look into as well. So we gave you the 5 ways I think you can find clients in this downward moving market. And then I gave you, I think, if I counted up right, four bonuses of what to do there. So that was kind of my opening volley for today to try to help you out with some ideas on how to get some clients. Hope that helped. Let's do this. We're going to go into the next 2 phases in a second, but I'm going to stop here and just see if anybody has any questions about any of the 9 ways we just talked about. So go ahead. If you have any questions about that, unmute yourself and let me know, and let's hear what you're thinking. Okay, and I'm also looking over in chat. Corey came in and said, got to run, Mike. Deal my 60-hour broker post license. Just wanted to pop by and say thanks for everything. And the question about Mo's, can it be customized for my brokerage? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I don't know if you're going to get this answer because you left, Corey, but yes, all of that can be customized for you. And maybe we'll chat more. All right, let's do this. I think Dave, are you there?
Yeah, I had a problem, as you know, the last couple of times.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get technical, but you know how I have to copy and paste the way you put it,
Yeah.
and I'm using a different platform, and it takes me a while to figure out how to do it.
Oh no. Well, you
I
got
didn't
it
know.
figured out now. I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, right?
How's Canada doing? You're up in Ontario,
Yeah, in Toronto, yeah.
Toronto.
What's your average price over there? Where are you again?
I'm in Metro Denver. I'm Metro Denver. So our
Denver.
average price is 600,000. I think
Okay.
we hit a peak of Well, it depends on which term you look at. That was actually Colorado. We're between 600 and 700 as an average. And then, of course, the low end, you probably can't find a house for anything less than 4 or 5, and it goes all the way up to the millions.
Okay. So when it comes to the interest going up, right? You guys have 15-year and 30-year mortgages, right?
In general, yeah. Usually it's a 30, but we have 15, 20, but yeah.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that when the interest rate changes, um unless you're going to buy or sell, it's not going to really affect you, right? Because you're not renewing it. Because you probably know we renew every 5 years, right? So 20% a year, let's just say, are renewing, right? And some people have variable mortgage, right? So every
Yeah,
time it goes up a quarter, half point, it goes up. Sometimes like the payment goes up right away, but the interest goes up right away, no matter
sure.
what. And it
Yeah,
just eats up the payment, right? Like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you, when you, I don't know all the details in Canada, so let me ask. You said every 5 years it renews. Is that on a fixed year, a fixed interest rate too? So if they're on a fixed interest rate, it's just fixed for the 5 years, and then at the end
yeah,
of 5, it resets to a new level for 5. So it's
mhm,
really an ARM that's locked in for 5 years. An ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage.
yeah.
It's like an ARM with a cap and collar for 5 years because of the fact that it has to. Boy, that's unfortunate. Yeah, we
Yeah.
forget in America how lucky we are to have fully amortized loans. That came in after the Great Depression, the depression of the 1930s. So in the late 30s, early 40s, I can't remember the date, but they came up with this idea of an amortized loan because of all the people lost their homes in the depression. Um, I didn't realize that Canada didn't have amortizing loans though. That's rough. So you have to readjust every 5. Um,
I
and
mean, there is such thing as a 10-year, but no one takes it, right? Because the interest is higher, right?
what's the tenure?
Well, I mean, looking back, they probably would have taken 10 years, right?
Yeah, if they knew what was happening, right?
But they didn't know, right? But okay, let me just give you an example. In 1983, I bought my first house, and the interest went from 17 and a half to, sorry, 12 and a half to 17 and a half, right? So about
Wow.
5%. So
Yeah.
that sounds like a lot. It's a high interest, right? But the house is only 39,000.
Right.
So it costs an extra 150 bucks a month, right?
Right.
And
Well, it was probably tough back then. It's all relative.
yeah, but even then, even though it's going up 5%, really it's only going up 50%. Like, you know what I mean? You're paying 12 and say it goes to 18, your cost of interest only went up 50%.
Right.
But now it's going
Well, now
thousands
that
of
the home
percent.
values are so high, what'd you say the
Yeah,
average there is $1 million?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So those little adjustments in interest rate is a huge amount in the overall interest and then the monthly payment, right?
yeah.
And so
So,
that's
so
what you're experiencing. So what kind of creative solutions have you all come up with going all the way back to the 80s and 90s? And then, can you bring that forward to today?
well, it's okay. Our interest is stalled now, right? Like the Bank Canada, they stalled the interest, right?
What
I know
does
you
that
guys
mean?
are, well, pause it. They pause it. They're not going to put it up anymore for a while.
They're not going to raise the rates anymore? Yeah.
Right. But for us, it's more necessary than for you guys, right? Because like I said, you have again 15 or 30-year mortgage, right?
If we
Um,
got the fixed, we also have adjustable rates, which adjust every year. But yeah,
yeah,
most
yeah.
people have fixed if they were smart, and that's most people.
But the difference is now, okay, it's hard to say, right? Because we're just getting started again. But they're still having multiple offers, but maybe 200,000 less.
Right?
So if somebody would have put 999 before, now they
Yep.
put 799
Right.
to get, multiple
Yeah, it's a
offers.
declining market.
Yeah.
It's because of the affordability. That's what you just said. The monthly payments going up, and because people's income's not going up, the
Hmm.
only way to make it work is to adjust the price down.
Hmm. Now, the other thing is we have like everybody else, we have a shortage of listings.
Yeah,
But I'm
that's
starting to
about to
think like,
change.
yeah, like that's what I'm thinking. People are holding on for a while, but
Yeah,
eventually they're going to, their mortgage went up 500, 700, $800 a
yeah.
month.
Just wait till we get into the summer and the spring and the
Yeah.
summer and the fall. That's about to change.
Yeah, I know. So
You've been through this, all these markets. We're going back into a slow market. Inventory is going to balloon. So now there's going to be motivation on the supply side to change your price. It's happening. It's being driven by affordability. The prices are so high, and the interest rate's now high. That combination is a high payment, and the only other variable is income. People's income might move up a little bit, but it ain't going to move up enough to catch up to what all that's doing. So the only way to make it work, if somebody has to sell, is they've got to drop down either the price or the interest rate, and they can't control the interest rate unless you're a seller with a no mortgage. That's what I was saying before. Now you actually could do something where you're flexible in the interest rate and or the payment. Like for instance, a seller who owes their home free and clear could do an interest only payment. Okay, that drops the payment, but they actually don't take any less of the interest, and they're hoping that eventually they'll get cashed out down the line and they'll get all their cash back when the market turns a little bit. These are things that a seller who has to sell can do. And as you already mentioned, and you're correct, people that don't have to sell, they just won't. So when we had this ballooning up of X amount of people that were selling in the last couple of years because they saw an opportunity, well, those people are going to deflate, right? The opportunity seekers are going away. The people who are just trying to cash in on the big money are going away. But there's still going to be a core of people have to move. And those are the people you and I have to help. The beauty of these have tos, is that they're harder to do, which means they need us. And it means they're going to pay us more to be successful. So I believe commission rates are going back up, right? In a hot market, commissions get constricted because things are so easy, and competitors come in and chop it down. That's fine, because in the reverse happens. We have people all leaving in droves. We'll probably have 100,000, 200,000 agents leave the business this year, either physically or mentally. They're gone. They're no longer competitors. And so that means there are fewer agents left, but there's a smaller pie. And so the really sharp agents, and in all markets, the sharp agents are going to do well. They're going to be able to charge a higher interest rate because they got to do a lot more work. You got to start helping these sellers strategize on how to make this thing work, as well as buyers, right? How can you go in and get the best deal? You become more valuable in a down market. Top agents always make more money in a down market than an up market, which blows people's minds. But it's just like any other industry. When things are tough, the sharp people rise and are in demand, and everybody else is not. So this is an advantage. People should be looking at this with some excitement. I know it's trepidation. It's going to be harder, but you need to charge in more in proportion to this challenge that's going to happen. So you're going to make more per transaction. So keep an open mind and be creative. That's why I tried to give you this list of some creative ways of doing it and who to be looking for. What else do you think, Dave?
Well, here's another thing. And when it comes to condominium, 70% of the new ones, right? 70% are investors. Okay. But now the problem is, like, they were going to flip it or they're going to sign it, right?
Right.
But they can't assign it.
Now they're going to take a bath. They're going to lose.
And now they can't, and sometimes they can't even close it because the value went down. Yep. So the mortgage is less that they're going to get.
Right.
And the interest is higher.
Yeah. So the seller's got to come to the closing with cash, right, to make up the difference, because the buyer's not going to pay extra just because the seller wants it. Think about the opposite. When the market was flying up, these investors didn't mind that they were making an extra 20% on their investment. They were happy as a lark. Well, here's the flip side of risk. Now they're going to take a 20% bath if they got to sell, or they're going to go into foreclosure, or they're going to have to do a short sell with a bank. Those are the things we all talked about. And again, that's why they need a good advisor, more so in a down market than an up market. They got to figure out how to get out of these traps they got themselves in. Maybe there's a solution, maybe there's a not, but it's not going to be easy, and you got to be creative. You got to think outside the box on how to make it work. But more than likely, they're going to take a bath somehow. They're going to lose some money, or they got to ride it out, right? And that's another option you got to talk to people about is, hey, maybe this is not the right time to sell. Maybe you hold on to this property and rent it out. But Mike, I got to relocate, 500 miles away or 1,000 miles away from my job. Yep. Keep this place as a rental. You got a nice low interest rate or whatever. Just Keep it until you can get yourself on your feet. Keep it until the market turns around, whatever. I remember when I came in the early 90s, 93, and I remember talking to a guy who owned a condo, and he had bought it in the high times. Market tanked, and he just held on to, for dear life, and rented it out. And then I caught it where it came back. So the price had been up here and had gone down, and then it came just back up where he could break even. And he called me up and said, "I got to sell this place." I said, "Okay, it looks like you're going to break even." He said, "Yeah, I've been holding on to it for 15 years. I got to get out of this thing." So it could be a while, but they do get some tax write-offs and some other issues that may help them out. So some people are going to have to just hold on, and you can advise them that's an option. All this becomes down to advice, and then when they decide what they want to do, you help execute. You got to be a solution finder, right, Dave?
Yeah. And when it comes to our government, they're like, I think he's like Trudeau, right? His name's Trudeau. I
Yeah.
think he's like Biden. He solves every problem with more tax.
Well, yeah, if we go into politics, that's going to take forever.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if they're good or bad on either side of the political equation. By the way, they all have their problems. Let's just start there. The fact is that we got to be practical people. See what's going. See what I like about you, Dave, is you're looking out there and seeing the problems, right? You do have to identify the problem first. But then you got to come up with the solution, right? You got to say, okay, this is the problem. Is it solvable? Is there a solution here? Like that's why I said, how can you make affordability work? You got three factors. You got the interest rate, you got the income, and then you got the house price. Well, the interest rate is controlled by your central bank, right? And so there's nothing you can do there. They're going to peg that. And then the other thing, so you can only hope that they make a change, and good luck. They don't plan on making a change for another 24 months, any of them, because they got to get a control of inflation. Now, the other side of the equation then is, so what we got interest rate, we got income. Is somebody's income going to shoot up and double over the next year? No, their income's not double. In fact, anything, it's probably going to slide a little bit right as we hit a recession. So that's not going to work. The only factor left is price. Price has got to come down to make affordability work. That's why I'm saying it's already happening in the US. If you start looking at individual markets all over the West, prices are falling. And remember, real estate moves slowly, though. It's not like it's going to fall 50% in a day. It's going to be like we've had a 8% decline in Denver in the last 6 months. But if I think it was 14% in Colorado, in our state, over the last 6 months. And we're not getting hit the hardest. There are places that have already fallen. If you look at their numbers over the last 6 months, they've fallen 20 to even as high as 33%. I saw in one county in California. Again, it's just because they got to adjust these prices into alignment, because otherwise there's no buyers, right?
Now, there's a mortgage guy that's been around for a while. You know what he said? He said the average house used to be two to two and a half times more than your income.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But now it's 8 or 9 times the income. Right?
Yeah, they can't qualify anymore. That's why the price has to come down. Or
right.
The interest rates have to drop, but that ain't happening. That's the other thing. That's the whammy we have happening right now is the interest rates shooting up when we already had super inflated prices.
Mm-hmm. And they're coming up. This government. This is not even a tax itself. Like 4.5 times the income. But how are you going to do that? How the house is worth right now 8 times the income, and you got to get 4.5 times. Like,
well, you tell me, right? The interest rate has to come down, incomes have to go up, or prices have to come down. And the easiest thing to move is the price. Yeah. It's the thing people don't want to do. Look, people had no problem raising their price 20% every year for the last 2 years. I mean, everybody loves going up. It's the down that's difficult, but it's the reality. That's what it is. So that's why you've got to advise your seller. You got to show them all the stats and say, hey, you're either going to make this adjustment, sell now, or don't sell. Keep it, hold on to it. Wait for another 5 or 10 years until the market clears out. But Mike, I got to move right now today because of XYZ. Okay, then you got to do these things. You got to adjust to move your price down. Then it becomes even, again, you have to be skilled at this. you have to be anticipating the decline. I can't tell which way you're looking for the decline, but anyway, you got to anticipate the decline over time. And you've got to advise them to do what I call a stair step down. You got to anticipate the market. You got to price here, even though everybody else is trying to price here, you got to actually price right below it and hit that price and get your buyer first before everybody else. Because if you don't, here's the next step down and the next step down. If you don't move your price fast enough, you'll sell way down here when you could have just sold below, but just way up here compared to where you would be. You've got to future cast them, and that's hard. You've got to really convince them of what's happening in the market. You're going to have to show a lot of stats. And the best stat to show them right now, I think, is affordability. Not only the price trending, days on the market, list to sales price, or sales to list price ratios. But if you look at the trend, which we don't normally look at in the sell side, which is affordability. And here's the two numbers you need to do that if you ever look at a graph or you're looking for a graph. The graph is how much does it cost to rent, okay, your typical place in today's market, versus how much does it cost to buy your typical house. And you've got to look at that gap, okay? What happens is as that gap grows, and as if your market's probably super huge in that gap, like how much does it cost on a payment for $1 million house in your market right now? What's the monthly payment? Just estimate it.
Well, at the low, it used to be 4,000. That was at the bottom.
Because the interest rates are almost zero.
It's probably, yeah, it's probably at least 6,000.
Right? Yeah. So let's take your 6, and it's probably moving up from there. Let's take your $6,000 a month to cover that average house. How much can you rent a house for in your market?
It's very expensive also, but I don't think it's more than 6,000.
I bet it's coming down. So what's going to happen is those rents, that variation is going to be different. Also, you would look at rent for an apartment as well, because people don't have to live in a house. They can live in an apartment to get by through the difficult times. So you're going to look at that comparison. And usually when you look at somebody, say, renting an apartment versus buying their starter home, okay, an entry-level home, that gap is what's making the difference in affordability. That's what they call the affordability gap. And so I've looked at a lot of markets across the U.S., and some of them it's $500, some it's $1,000, some it's $2,000, some are as high as $4,000 between renting and owning. Well, nobody's going to go own when they can rent for $4,000 less and get themselves through the difficult economic times, especially as they see prices flattening and falling. Who would buy into that? So that's why you're looking for people who are motivated, and they're looking for, they usually have a life change issue, right? There's a birth, there's a death, there's a job being gained or a job lost. There are these big life changes that are requiring them to move.
And some people might say, you know what? My house already went down 20%. It probably hit the rock bottom. I said, no, because it went up 30% before.
Right. And that's what you got to remind them, David. They're hard conversations. You got to say, yeah, but you didn't mind when it went up 30%, right? Because then it brings them back to reality, right? It's like, if this is when you want to sell, this is what you got to do. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. You always give them that open door. That's okay. But this is what you got to do in today's market based on everything that we're seeing. Well, I want to really try hard for, okay, fine. What's your time frame? If they have a long enough time frame, like they don't have to be sold for 4 to 6 months, then I'll tell them. In the old days when I was listing lots of homes, I'd say, let's test it then. Let's test for a couple of weeks. Here's a schedule. We'll start at your high price, but we're going to drop down every week or every 2 weeks or whatever the plan is until we get down into the zone that the market is telling us it's at. Just remember what I warned you about, and I draw this out on a piece of paper, the stair steps. I say, if you don't move quick enough, you can end up way down here because you didn't want to move fast in the beginning. Just, I want you to know I warned you that.
Because you're chasing the market down, right?
You are chasing the market down. Another good language to use. Yep. Don't end up chasing the market down. You've got a tough situation up there, Dave. Dave, it was fun as the market was moving up and the commissions were huge because the prices were awesome. Now you got to work for your cash as that market comes back down. Just know that your competitions, most of them are going to wimp out and leave. So you're going to, if you have enough guts and you're honest enough and strong enough, you're going to get in there and help people. You're going to be more valuable to people, whether you make more money or not. you are going to have more satisfaction in this market helping people because they need you today. Yeah. I know I don't have any magic pill answers for you. There are none. The answer is you just got to look for the opportunities, be creative, look for solutions in each individual situation.
Right.
And have these concepts in your head that you can talk to people about. The stair step down, the chasing the market down. Are you going to let your neighbor sell their home before you because you're not aggressive enough? So you come up with good questions to ask people. Okay.
Let me ask you just one
What's
question.
What's going to happen if you don't get this home sold when you said you need it sold? That's a great question, because that gets them worried about the other alternatives of what's going on in their situation. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Just a question about the Fed, right? Like I heard just recently this week, right? He wants to put up more and maybe faster, harder, and all that, right?
Yep.
But you know what? I mean, okay, here we are. We're going to the grocery store. We're
Yep.
paying an extra $1 for bananas, let's just say.
Yes.
For example.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But which one is more hard on us? Is it paying an extra $1 for a banana, or paying an extra $500, $600, $1,000 for the mortgage?
This is a great question, Dave. These are my opinions, okay?
Yeah.
Just what I've learned, what I believe in my life experience, etc. So keep that in mind. I believe the Federal Reserve, we call it the Fed here. Other countries will call it central bank. I believe they're doing the right thing because I studied economics and history when I was an undergrad. So I'm very familiar with the ugliness that can happen if these things get out of control. Mm-hmm. For most of us old enough and alive, the 70s and 80s, when I was a kid, is when we had this nasty inflation. If you read about that as an example, just going back to there, they had this massive inflation going on. It took over 10 years for them to get it under control, right? And what that inflation does, as you've just talked about, is it eats away at your buying power to go buy bananas, right? To buy food, you need to live, to put gas in your car, all these things. That's why wages start to go up, but wages lag everything. They always get adjusted after the fact. So that's why they're in the awful position if you're earning a wage. The inflation, the corporations will bump their price up today. They'll do it tomorrow. They'll do it yesterday. They already did it, right? And so they're trying to anticipate too. So they're bumping up their prices. They can just do it faster. Here's what they're trying to avoid is, if you've ever done any reading, go back and read in the 1930s, the 1929 and the stock market crash, and then into the early 30s, where there was a depression, where 1 in 4 people were out of work, where people were literally standing in line to get a bowl of soup. I mean, it was crap. It was an awful time to live. And then if you don't like that scenario, go look at South America during the 70s and 80s, where they devalued their currency to the point of hyperinflation, okay, where prices were jumping. Not, we're experiencing 5 or 10% inflation, which is extremely painful. They were in 50%, 100%, 200% a year inflation, right? That was insane. They were having to they had to go to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and restructure their entire currency. Go back to World War II and look at Germany, when everything was going to crap in there at the end, and they start to have hyperinflation. And I remember so vividly as a kid looking at this old lady with a wheelbarrow with the currency, the mark or whatever it was, piled up in the wheelbarrow, and she was bringing it to the baker to buy bread, just to buy bread. I mean, those things are nuts, right? That's where people are trying to buy gold and silver and hold on to something that has intrinsic value. We took ourselves off the gold standard here in the US in 72, and we're the world currency. Everybody looks at the US dollar as the support of the whole system. Well, that isn't backed by anything anymore. It's only the good faith of what we think a dollar is worth. I know I'm giving a long-winded answer, but it's coming all the way back around to right now, the Fed has got to pull down inflation, because if it steps up into any of these extended inflations, or worse, a hyperinflation, You think it's hard now. It'll be impossible. It will be carnage. People will be murdering each other for a loaf of bread. I mean, we do not want that kind of world. So that's why they got to do these very difficult, ugly adjustments to get things back down. I know it's the right move. I feel the pain like everybody else. I hate it, but I know it has to happen.
Okay, let me ask one last question. The interest rates are going up. The inflation is going up. Um,
Inflation is pushing interest rates up, by the way. Okay.
right. But these two things are negatives, and
Yes.
yet the job, I think it's because they're coming back from the COVID, right? But
Yep.
the jobs, it looks like the jobs are really doing well, right?
Unemployment at 3.5% down here. Yeah, in the U.S. I bet it's similar in Canada. Um, yeah, that's the part of the whole equation, right? That's what's unique about this one is our unemployment is still really low. 5% is considered full employment. Anything below that is crazy busy because you need some unemployment for people to move back and forth between jobs and fluidity in an economy. If you think back to the early 90s, and around 2000, where we had the dot-com bust, unemployment got to 10%, and it was very painful, very painful. In fact, that was the Great Recession of the early 2010s. It was around, I think, 9-10% unemployment. That gets very painful. That's why I say the depression's 25% and above, and that's why you don't want to go there. They're trying to avoid that, and it's the only bright spot of the economy right now is that unemployment is so low. It allows workers to actually demand a little more income so they can survive some of these price shocks that they're getting. But that's going away. The Fed has made it very clear through what they're talking about that their objective is to reduce unemployment. In other words, increase unemployment and reduce employment. And it's already happening here. We're already having layoffs, big corporations. It's going to reduce. The problem with all these things when you're trying to move an economy is there's no perfect dial. It's only like you can move it a direction, but you don't know how far it's going to go. So that's like we had. I'm talking so much, but we had COVID hit, and we looked like we were going to go into a depression. That's what they thought. If you remember at the beginning, the first 3 or 4 months, it looked terrible. Nobody was working. Everything was locked down. It was awful. They thought that we were going to go into a massive depression. So they pumped all this money into the economy to try to reverse that. And it worked, but it worked too good. That's what I'm saying. They don't know how far things are going to go. They just know which direction. So they did it and boom, yeah, everything went up, but it went up too far. And now we're trying to adjust back down. And that's why they're trying to do the dials on the economy, but they don't know. They're screwing around. That's what I learned in school too. They kind of know, but they don't know for sure. And so it's starting to go down. And if they do a little too much, it's going to nosedive. So they're trying to hold on to employment, but unemployment is going to go up. People are going to lose their jobs. That's going to create even more panic. But the nice thing about it is it'll help stabilize prices.
It's part of because it's such a low participation rate. Is that part of it?
Say again?
It's such a low participation rate.
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, of all the people that are out there that are working age, I think there's only 62% are actively, like if somebody is not unemployment, they just quit looking, they're not counted, right?
That's correct. It's only the people that are looking for jobs. Same with the 25% I talked about. There's only the people, in fact, it was only white males at that time, but it was only people looking for jobs.
Right. Because the participate rate is so low that it makes the unemployment rate look good.
Yeah, that's true. It may be a false reading. Yeah. They've had the argument on that too. Doesn't matter. That's what all of this is interesting speculation, and you should know it so you can talk to your clients and help advise them and try to plan for yourself. But in the end, all you can do is work today. What can you work on today? And that's what we're trying to talk about. How can you position yourself today to win? How can you help people today? How can you advise them? And by the way, all these things I've talked about, you have to mention to your clients, this is my speculation. I really don't know where the market's going to go. I'm only guessing based on trends and what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to go down the tubes at the beginning of 2020. I thought the market was going to slide and values were going to fall, and they started to, and then they turned and went up by 40%. Could that happen again? Maybe. Although the dynamics don't seem like it could, I guess somehow it could. How would it go up again? Interest rates would have to drop down to zero again. Fed said it ain't doing that because it's got to control inflation, but that's what that would have to happen. People all of a sudden make twice as much income as they used to. That ain't going to happen. That's just not realistic. The only variable is price. Yeah, supply and demand. Demand is going to go down, and that's why it's going to adjust. And people say, well, there's not a lot of supply out there right now. Yeah, maybe, but this is also a slower time of the year. It's now starting about to pick up where people start to come into the market. Well, maybe it's not going to happen this first year. You're right. Maybe nobody moves this year. Come on, people move every single year. But sure, maybe nobody moves this year. They're going to want to move by next year. Right? Eventually, they're going to want to move for their reason.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if people are losing their jobs, they're going to get motivated to sell also because they got to cash out. They can't make the payment.
So your market just going sideways now?
Say that again.
Your market just going sideways?
My market has actually already come down in pricing 8% in my city and 14% in my state. Okay. It depends. Everything is real estate is local. Every market is different. Mm-hmm. In the last recession, the Great Recession, Colorado kind of went flat. I think overall in the whole recession, we only went down like 10%. Whereas just south of us in Phoenix, those guys fell 50 and 60%, depending on where they were. They just went poof. I was talking to agents down there crying. I mean, they just got nailed. By the way, who made the money? The REO agents. That was one of the groups I talked about earlier today, right? Short sell agents. They figured out how to make it work. And then you have people with no loan. People have equity. That's why I mentioned that. Those people could still move. They just sold for less than what it was. What does it matter? They if they sell it here or here, they got no mortgage to pay off. So that's people you should be looking for. 40% of the people have no mortgage here in America. I was shocked. You would not think that. I remember when I started, the number was much higher than I thought it would be. And I think then it was like 10 or 20% of the people had no mortgage. We have a aging population in general. The baby boomers, they've been saving, they've been paying off their mortgages. There's a lot of people that don't have a note. Those are people we can help.
Right. Okay.
If you think that's what you got to do, you've got to now look for, and I started, again, you missed the first part of our call, but I talked about you got to find qualified, motivated people. Qualified and motivated. They got to be motivated. They have to sell for one reason or another, but that's not enough. They got to be qualified that they can sell or buy. Okay, so qualified on the sell is they have either a low enough payoff on their mortgage, or they got enough cash to make up the difference, or to have another solution like a short sell. If they can't, then they can't. They just can't move, not with your help. Buyers, same thing. They got motivation that they want to buy. And then number two, they got to be qualified. They got to have the financing to get done because banks are going to make their requirements harder as they're moving forward. So you have to have a really strong buyer, good income, good credit, good ratios. They don't have a lot of debt. Boom. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I think first-time home buyers are going to be in great position for that because they're coming into life they're not saddled by a bunch of debt. Maybe they got themselves a decent income because of some jobs that were available. I mean, I remember I came out of college and, I was in college. I had an internship actually at a really great company making a really good money at the time. It was $10 an hour, but it was really good at the time because the minimum wage was $3. So my peers were amazed that I could even get an internship because they couldn't find jobs, right? We were in a recession at the time, and it wasn't even one of the big ones. That was in the early 90s. So I just think that these kids coming in, that I call them kids, younger than me or whatever, they've got this opportunity. They're going to be good buyers, especially if the market starts to slide. Now the affordability comes in line, and they're going to have the option of, do I want to rent or do I want to buy? If it's the same payment, why wouldn't you buy, right? But now, as you already pointed out, if the payment to buy is way up here and the payment to rent is way down here, they're not going to buy. Not today. There's no excitement. Why would they do that? In fact, you would feel terrible helping them do that. You'd be saying, maybe you should wait a couple of years, right? Yeah, these are the markets that test your ethics as well. Are you really a true, honest person that helps people? Or are you just out to make a fast buck? And it becomes very difficult. The reason it's a test is because you're feeling some financial strain at the same time. Just remember, I advise anyone listening to us, help them out, be honest. That's going to come back. It's going to build your reputation. Mike or Dave, they told me the truth in this really difficult market. And so I know they're going to tell me the truth in a good market. They helped me. They were honest with me. They're going to tell their friends. That reputation is going to spread. And the reverse happens, right? If you were to burn somebody, they're going to tell 10 people. They're going to tell as many people as they can bump into. Don't ever use these guys. Don't ever talk to them, right? So don't burn anybody. Just be honest. Give all the options. If it gets really weird, be sure to write it down. Be sure to write it down. Send them a letter. I advised you not to sell it this time because you got these problems. Or I advised you not to do this kind of option you want because it didn't make any sense. Or I advised you this option you want to do doesn't make the most sense, and here's why, but I'll help you with it, but I really don't want to because I think these are the problems. Send it to them in a letter or send them an email, but keep it in the file. Just so, because people have short memories with problems, right? If it all goes to hell and they hire a lawyer, go to court, they forgot about all the things you advised them about conveniently, right? So you want to make sure you got it in your file. It'll end your problem real quick.
Yeah. You got selective memory.
Yes, we all do. We all do. I know we do. That's why tell me, what did you have for lunch, Dave? 1 year ago today. What did you have for lunch?
I don't remember last week.
Exactly. Nobody else can either. How are you going to remember a conversation you had 5 years ago? You might remember the essence of it, but you don't know exactly what was said. That's why you want to write it all down in a note, put it in a file, preferably send them a letter. If it's a real significant thing, say, hey, I even send them a letter telling them, here's what's going on. Here's a copy of it. Your Honor, could you please let me off the hook here? I really tried to help them, and here's my proof. And they're going to turn to the other side. Okay, well, do you have proof of what you're saying? And they're going to say, no, that's just what happened. That's what I said. Okay, but do you have it written down anywhere? No. Okay, well, then I have to award this to the person who wrote it down because that sounds more viable, more real. Mm-hmm. That's what you would do if you were the judge too. Yeah. Well, Dave, we come to the end of our call. Thank you for participating. It was really good to see you and hear about the Canadian market. Wish I had better answers for you other than be solution oriented. Look for the solution and look for the people who are qualified and motivated. Those are the ones you can help the easiest. Okay. Good. All right, Dave. Good chatting with you. Thanks for joining us. And everyone else that was here on the call, thanks for joining us on the Referral Mastermind Call. We'll go ahead and post this session on YouTube as well as on the Facebook group. We'll be back here again in a week. Hope you all have a great and productive week. Take care. Bye now. Bye, Dave. All right.